system. It's just the daytime.
We're gonna jump right into it. Some cats will be joining a little bit later into the session, so we're just gonna roll with the punches. Right off the bat, we have quite a bit to go over, so we're gonna start with Alcatraz and a couple other things, and then just kind of segue from there. Tonight we have myself, Robert, the project director, and then we have Efron, one of our level designers here. He'll be talking about his work in just a second. But what I wanted to do is just kind of preface the discussion with essentially how this week has gone. One of the biggest things that we set out to do this week was to tackle a lot of the issues that were presenting themselves in the playtest that people in this room have noticed. People that were just playing random people on the Discord, sitting in a room with them. We published a video a couple of days ago about one of the last playtests that we did, and just looking at the bugs, looking at the network traffic, and trying to figure out like, okay, like where do we need to prioritize in terms of like basically knocking things off the chart. One of the things that we did this week was going through and doing we've been doing network stress tests for about the last week, since last Saturday when we met. And my goal there was to go through and just kind of identify like tension points where the network would go too high, things are too expensive, what we could do better. One of the other things that we set out to do this week was finish up the ability system. We showed off some stuff last week of the Monterey Bay map, which Efron's been working on. We have some progress to show for the hub in terms of basically its exterior being done, and it's looking beautiful. We have some progress to show for replication and bug fixes. I mean, there's a lot to go into. There's a couple of things that I neglected to mention last week, so we'll briefly hit upon those. And then at the end, we'll open it up for a Q&A for about 20 to 30 minutes. And then if there's enough interest, we'll do a public playtest, which is anyone that's interested that wants to jump in and play co-op with us. So we'll host a dev game, jump in, I'll share a password on Discord, and we'll go from there. It just depends on how many people are interested to play tonight. There was another build that I just pushed out to the DevOps for it's changed a little bit here and there since the last time we played about 24 hours ago in the public Discord. So right in the background, we're going to switch over to my share screen, and we're going to bring up the map that Dimitri's taking up stewardship. So one of the things that he's been doing is slowly but surely, painstakingly, just kind of building the exterior of the jailhouse, the main structure. And you're going to start to see over the next week the exterior get like populated and filled in, like the roof and all that. Look at me eject so I can pop out. Is that you figure he's been just kind of going through and just kind of building it, and you notice there's not that much deterioration or like destruction on it. That's one of the things that he's saving for polish, to basically like iron out that, so that way there's more like the textures look more run down. The concrete and other stuff like that is decaying and broken because this is like a 60, 70-year-old structure. And then one of the things that he's doing right now, going into Sunday, Monday, is he's setting up and working on this little area here that leads into the firing range and the play area, like the little courtyard that they have on the real version of Alcatraz. So it's one of the things that he's working on, is just kind of integrating and setting up this little trench here and getting into where this is going to be where you go for like the operators that you like their weapon range. Like this is the only area you'll be able to shoot in. And then when you leave this area, it'll go weapon safety is forced to basically like, go and navigate in here. Because his next goal, after he gets that little courtyard situated, and he gets the layout of how he wants to build this canal and everything, is to basically build out the first floor of the jailhouse, which is going to be occupying this space. So here, I'll jump in so you guys can actually see the scale of it. You can see that he's been kind of setting up the windows, so you'll be able to look inside the structure and see other operators running around, going to different kiosks, like, because you're going to have like a customization. You're going to have an area where you go to launch in the horde missions. You're going to have an area that you go into to launch in the pandemic. Any other content that we add, the idea is like Warframe or like Space Marine 2, that building is going to be your central location for like starting anything. And the idea is that we'll have it to where you press escape or tab and then you'll be able to bring up a menu and you can teleport. And other operators on the map can teleport. So if you don't want to walk everywhere, you don't have to. Now, one of the things that I'll look into, because I know some people have mentioned it in the past, is that people that don't want to like interact with the operator will have to look into basically making like an RTS only mode where like you press a key and like you only just jump around like in say XCOM, or it's just preset cameras and you jump around and do that kind of stuff. So that's something that we'll look into as well if there's enough demand for it. because I know that I've gotten like one person mention that a long time ago, and then I haven't heard a peep out of it in weeks, months. I think it's been like months. So it's one of those things where I'll put it out there now for something for people to consider, and then it's something that I need to kind of like look into as we work into polishing and getting this island to where it needs to be. Because one of the biggest things, this map is going to kind of be the golden standard of like the amount of attention to detail and like environmental storytelling we're going to be pushing going into like the reimagining of Angel Island and Treasure and San Francisco North and everything else, and kind of what Efron's working on the Monterey Bay area, which will show as a replacement horde map to get rid of the current dirty prototype map that we have. So that kind of sums up the jailhouse, and I think it's looking beautiful. He's been working on this for about a week. Give us a little bit of change, and you're going to see more going into next Saturday when we meet. Is you'll see the little ramp here, and ideally, depending on his time frame, he'll start building out the interiors, and you'll start seeing rooms appearing in here, and you'll start to see like the Surkai command and just like the different separation of duties and the jailhouses, and be able to do a little bit of virtual tourism and just kind of explore like Alcatraz in terms of the interior. Because I've been there a couple times for tours when we went, and it is cool. It is a very cool place to go to take a tour. You take a boat out, and you just kind of get to explore the island for like as long as you want. Generally, you get to be off the island by 6 p.m. when the last boat leaves. Otherwise, the park rangers hunt you down. But you figure it's one of those things where like it's a really cool place to go to, and it's really cool for us to kind of be able to sit here and build that attention to detail and that time into this island, and then you guys will be able to appreciate it and be able to play on it and stage and set up your missions. Now, this is something that I'll bring up now, and then you guys are welcome to bring this up again at the end, at the Q&A, is one of the things that I'm wrestling with is potentially adding like a lobby or like a ready up screen, where the idea is that like right now, a host can just grab everyone and force them into a session. But when we get to the point of having operators over here customizing their weapons, other people on the firing range, we're probably going to have to go in the route of like Age of Empires or like Space Marine, where there's a ready up system, or every player generally has to go to like, say, the dock, or if they're an RTS, press a button, and that would be their vote to basically disembark to whatever mission the host has picked. Because that's one of the things that we want to do is the immersion, is like integrate everything here into basically the gameplay flow of what you're doing. So it's like it's cool, like whether it be you're taking off from a helicopter over there, or you're on this, you're loading up on the aircraft carrier as like a ready up screen. So that's something that we're considering. I'm mulling it over with the boys, and it's something we want to do definitely as we go into polish, and just throwing that idea out now for a discussion point going into the Q&A and what people think about that. So I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to...
I will say I certainly...
You snuck in.
I certainly like that idea.
Last time we were talking. Okay, so you snuck in. Anything you want to add on that before I have Efron take over for the Monterey Bay map?
Well, I just wanted to add in that it honestly a whole ready up thing is genuinely a good idea. Like it actually is genuinely a good idea.
Because you figure like it's just very abrupt, and it gives people time to do whatever they're gonna do on the map. To basically like some guy can't just pull everyone around constantly. So it's something that we're looking into, and we'll see about doing that. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna pull us over to the map that Efron's been working on, and then he could talk about that. So, Efron, whenever you're ready, tell me where you want me to go, and you can start talking about what you've been doing.
All right. Just pop in anywhere. I mean, I've been kind of working my way through it as far as laying in the street. Well, the streets are done. Got all the road meshes in there. I'm doing sidewalks. Currently also working on it as we speak. Putting in all the sidewalks, all the details for the cities, like planters, grass areas, all that good stuff.
Grid by grid, basically. Right?
Parking lots, yeah, pretty much. Like grid 1 and 2, 1 through 3 are done. 4 is almost done. 5 and 6 will be following after that. Just like what you see right there is putting in all the fencing for the houses and the properties and the warehouses and all those areas. Sidewalks and parking spaces for the convention center downtown, all the office buildings and stuff like that. Next go around, I'm going to start adding trees and all the smaller stuff, the cars, all the decorative stuff like street lights, mailboxes, fire hydrants, all that great stuff that'll add a little more, functionality to the city, I guess you can say. But it's a slow process. I've been speeding it up a little more, putting a ton of time into this to at least get it ready within the next week. Also doing a little modification to the initial spawn areas. Because we were talking about like the approach we're going to take as far as like the spawning goes is, for starters, we're going to have a lot of these infected spawn from outside the map. Like you've seen a few caves, a couple of like little spawning valleys, and of course the initial sewers that I put in for them to spawn out of. That one I'm actually going to change to like a tunnel, so that they're coming out of the tunnel. Maybe even that one as well. A couple of these others I'm going to turn into caves, and then a few that are going to be like valleys. These are going to be inaccessible areas that they're going to be able to spawn at. I've kind of thrown the idea out to Rob about, like, if you guys ever get the idea of going over there and camping some of these spawn points, just have them spawn from like random areas in the map, so it kind of throws you off and it doesn't make it too easy.
Let me throw something in there.
But I doubt people are going to have. I mean, yeah, we could, but I mean, at the moment, I'm doubting players are going to have enough time to set up somewhere and camp it.
I have some evil plans based off of talking to Krieg and a couple other people. Because again, we've had a couple of so every once in a while, I'll throw the people on the public playtest in this map, and it's kind of broken in some ways. But we just kind of look at it, play at it. I write down some notes, I scribble some stuff down, and then I come back to it later on. So we have like maybe a 10-minute session here, 5-minute session there. It breaks horribly. And then I go back to the drawing board and I write things down and I notate things of how people play. So one of the biggest things that I'm aiming to do when we go to like this new horde map, because this is the golden standard for horde maps, and we're not even going to call it horde anymore, because by all intents and purposes, it's not even horde. It's our own unique game mode. And the idea, it's almost like Rush from Battlefield. So the idea that I'm going into for this final map that we're going to give you guys, ideally, for like we're going to give you for basically when you're playing it like publicly with your friends while we're working on phase 2, we're putting in the vehicles, the doctrines, the airstrikes, all the things that go boom. Is the idea is that we're gonna sector this out, and the idea is that you have a strategic resource to guard here, you have a strategic resource to guard here, here, and down over here. And the idea is that as you lose those, it folds infection growth and gas to take over that zone, which then moves the spawns of the infected closer to the edges of the map. So think of it as like, I'm going to draw a very horrible diagram, but the basic notion is that you have it to where, let's say they take this point out, then now this area, this area right here is now irradiated with the infection gas towers showing up here, here, and here. And then it moves the infection spawners here, 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 here. Go away, Windows. No one likes you. Here and here. So that way it moves the front up. It decreases the time that it takes for them to reinforce and to hit other strategic locations on the map. So the idea is that, let's say, for instance, you lose the next strategic resource, which is the medical research facility here. Then at that point, you lose that grid. These are not final zones. And then from there, it moves their spawners here, here, here. Oh, that's a bad way of doing it. I should have did a different color. But that's the general idea that we're going into based off of the limited playtest that I've seen watching people play the game and how they like to turtle and how they like to abuse the AI. And then they'll have like little like hidden camps over here. They'll back cap the sock here. Is that no? The priority is you're trying to keep as many strategic resources online as long as possible to basically survive till wave 50. So the next thing would be the next strategic resource is here. So the idea is that if they take that, then this area gets irradiated. And then now it moves the spawns. Well, not that much. That's too much. It'd probably be like 1 block each, so they give you enough padding. And then that way it moves the spawners up from the caves. Because originally they're spawning here, 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 and here. So that way it lowers the response time, and then they're folding in towards the center. And before you know it, that entire center is a kill zone. In terms of basically like you got to have, and this would build into the vehicles, the airstrikes, the operators being fully realized going into next week. So the idea is that like if you're not proactive, if you're not going out and securing these zones, if you're not building stuff, then it's one of those things where like you're going to lose a zone. It's going to fold in. You cannot take it back. And at that point, you have to just sit in the bed you've made with. Like, you know, so this would force people to break up into sub-teams. You have an operator, 2 or 3 operators with 1 RTS player. You know, and they're breaking off into teams left, right, and, you know, the center, theoretically, you don't have to worry about too much because you cut them off on the green, the blue, and the red, and you have maybe 1 or 2 people running security at the center command structure here, then you'll generally be fine. Because the idea is that that's like the regional command, and then everything else are like substructures, support structures for their operations in this zone. And then like some of the structures' names that you guys have seen in the playtest are going to be renamed. Some of the models are going to change. Like this is like the center HQ, like circus, like regional headquarters for the Monterey area. Because the idea is in the lore, the Voyager Dawn crashes and beaches somewhere over here. So they set up their base of operations, and the idea is that the virus is spreading in this area without Chelsea. And it's in the book. So the idea is in that way we're able to kind of push other areas, other regions, be able to give you guys a map that's not pandemic size, but at least gives you enough area to play with and to break up into subgroups. Because I'll show you guys an example, is that over the course of the last couple of days, it was really, really fun to see people basically like doing this kind of stuff when we were playing. But we would have like an RTS player, like with the medic, assigned to 2 operators, just running around healing them, just doing their thing. RTS players are over here building the compound, doing security, you know, staging for another attack. So the idea is that it would be everything you've done on the Horde map as it stands right now, but to a larger, greater scale. So like, an example would be like later in the sessions, we would basically like break up into teams of like RTS players running their own like kill squads of like that's 1 player, another player's controlling another group of units, another player's controlling another squad. There's like 3 RTS players right there. And we're all just like, okay, you're going south, we're going north, there's some infected in the north, can we get a flare? A flare gets shot up, then basically you know what's around you, and you're able to coordinate and strategize. And this is what I mean by like, this was the network stress test we did like 2 days ago. And you can see I'm constantly just bringing up diagnostic tools and figuring out like, what do we need to focus on? What kind of issues are presenting themselves? Is someone getting lag in the room? Great. Let me bring up my tools, do a network capture, and figure out what I need to do going into tomorrow or the day after that. And you can see this is a perfect example right here. Where this is me playing, and I'm just moving a squad up, and I think that's Ford. And Ford's basically just killing the infected that are coming out of that spawner, and he's trying to secure the area, get his walls back up. And I just kind of came over to help, basically. So it's the direction we're moving in. And with that larger map, it's going to be great for basically being able to allow people the autonomy and be like, okay, you 2 are responsible for this area, this zone. You 2 are responsible for that zone. You 2 are responsible for that zone. We're going to break up and maybe have 6 operators in the game, and they're going to just be fire teams and run around and just support holes. You know, they're like so that way they're able to get in there and just kind of figure out what needs to be done. So that's my vision. That's what everything's building towards the end of phase 1. I know I get that question a lot of like, what do you envision the game to be like? Is that this is what it's going to be like in the next 2 or 3 weeks that we're building towards actively. And then this map is going to be the mainline item that everyone's playing on and kind of like getting a feel for it. We also got the aircraft carrier, and so it's kind of hiding over here. It's doesn't do anything besides just, you can see when people are buying units, they're coming from the aircraft carrier and they're heading in to like drop off stuff. So we just kind of put it there. When we get to doing phase 2, then anyone can just control the aircraft carrier and be able to like bring it closer to the water as long as it'll permit, and then be able to like, you know, use the guns and be able to provide some cover support to like some of the stuff. Like you could theoretically take it around here and strafe infected, theoretically, or just launch helicopters and use it as a resupply base. So that's the direction we're going in there. So anything else you want to hit upon for this map, Efron, before we move on to the next section?
Oh, that's
Okay,
pretty much
so
it.
keep in mind that, like, you figure that what I talked about for the horde stuff is not implemented, that's something I'm doing going into this week, is adding in the layers and adding in like the fallback points and making it to where it's more threatening. So the failure is rewarded with overwhelming like odds, overwhelming like like numbers, where it's like they're going to just start spawning all along this strip, and then they're going to attack this regional command, and they're going to, whoever can will attack this. And then if you lose this structure, they're going to start spawning at these homes over here. There's going to be gas towers that dynamically get spawned. You're going to see a particle effect come up where it shows if you go into this zone, you're going to die within 5 to 10 seconds. And when you lose a zone, you're going to have maybe a minute maybe before everything in that zone just dies. And the idea is that way you fall back to your defensive line in the city, and you make your last stand if you're getting your ass whooped that much. The idea is you don't lose any zones, and you're proactive. Maybe you lose 1 or 2, but then you kind of fold around and roll with the punches per se. And then one thing that we're going to be sticking to doing is that over the next week, like, these structures are not enterable, but me and Derek will be getting together and like using the prototype that we did in the horde co-op map and simplifying the setup for the level designers to make it a lot intuitive and a lot easier for them to jump in and make more of these structures enterable. Because our goal on this map is to make it to where every rooftop can be built on, and every building can be entered, every building can be scaled by the infected, or they can be entered through doors. So one of the things that we're seeking to improve with me and Derek towards the end of phase 1 is one of the extra line items for like polish is making it to where if an infected can enter through that door and come out that door, or that door, or that door, based off of its path finding. So walls, positioning, line of sight, everything will matter. You have to pay attention to like, oh, that door actually has a value in gameplay. Like, because if you look at the old horde map, it does that way, where like they can go through one door and then they can come out the other door. So you have to pay attention to every small little detail, and it's not just gonna be like, oh, that's just a door, it's painted there, it doesn't matter. It's gonna be like, oh yeah, no, if I go through that door right there, I'm gonna come out either here, depending on where the level designer chooses, because some of these buildings are gonna have to be updated to later standards. These are buildings from the original OG like legacy version. Some of them don't facilitate all the changes that we need. Like this one would facilitate it right out of the box, but other ones won't, like this one, but that one would. So that's the idea, is that like those are small little things that we're going to kind of like implement and do as we get this map fully functional. So you'll see it in layers as we kind of go over the next couple of weeks, going into June, going into July and whatnot. So the next thing that we basically did was, let me bring up, I'm going to just show this very briefly. Let me bring this up. Hold on. I don't know if I showed this last week, so I apologize if I'm treading over something I already showed. But I wanted to show that we did get the sniping. I don't know if I might have showed this, but basically, like, we're going through the abilities, and we've been basically battle testing it and figuring out what kind of replication issues do we run into for cooldowns, for responsiveness. We had issues that presented themselves in the last 24 to 48 hours of playtest, and they were all eradicated and fixed in terms of like issues that like Ford were running into, and other playtesters like Rufio were running into, where like the medic's heal ability wouldn't work for some clients, but it would work for some. It was back and forth random. So we've been kind of going through and hunting down bugs and getting everything set up. Like here, I'll show you. I don't think we have a GIF for that. Otherwise, actually, technically I showed it earlier, but the medic healing ability, which was like this, I kind of breezed over that because I'm so bad. But like, just to kind of show it again real quickly, is that like that medic is going to basically heal that operator, but it extends to everyone. And if I highlight over him, it would show like a radius per se of like, if I go back a little bit, then it does it automatically. So the idea is there's a sort of a radius around the medic, and you can highlight the ability, which I'll demonstrate in a test map. Because that was really important to Derek to hit upon this time, as he really wanted to nail down the quality of life changes this time, to make it like super apparent in terms of like, if you have an ability, what is their automatic resupply radius? Like, because we didn't have that in Legacy, so you had no idea, is he gonna heal someone? Like, what is the radius? So we got that in there, and then you just highlight it. You don't have to click on it. And if you click that, then you won't heal anyone. But if you click it, then it'll auto heal anyone that gets hurt in that area. So if I move this guy over here, and I type in a command of damage selected unit to 5, then you figure he's going to run over there and do his job. And then you figure if I damage that person to 20, when he's done healing, he'll detect it and run over and do his job there. And this is the fundamental system that we're building to improve upon long-standing issues that we have with the MO Atlas guys, where they just go full retard and they're like, oh, you want MO? And they don't do anything. Like, they'll just break half the time. So the underlying system of how she works is the underlying system of how MO runners are going to operate. So we're trying to eradicate and build a foundational system now. So when we get to phase 2 for the MO runners for the Atlas, it's as battle tested and as optimal and as bugless as possible. So we can basically hit upon all of those issues that we've heard from people about, like, why are my MO runners not doing anything? What is going on? So obviously they can't heal themselves. And one of the important things to keep in mind is that if they're not on hold fire, they will prioritize shooting over healing. But if you put them on hold fire, which I'll demonstrate right now, so let's say let's see, what would be the combination here? I would have to spawn some infected, and then I would damage you, and then I would unpause. And that they're gonna prioritize keeping themselves alive, and then he's gonna be like, oh, I gotta go heal that guy. After they're all dead, he would first shoot everyone like you saw in the video. But the idea is that, like in Legacy, if I put him to hold fire, wrong button, because I'm retarded, and then if I spawn some infected in, and then I damage him, then he's gonna just, well, I gotta do my job. It doesn't matter if I die or not. So then that way it gives you that ability of like you don't have to micromanage them as much, as long as they're generally kept within a squad, and you only like have maybe that one guy hotkeyed. Then you can get into that per key moment of like, oh, well, I want that guy to only heal, and maybe only in a desperate situation will I take him off a hold fire. Or maybe he's only set to target, structures or special targets like spitters, so that way he'll only fire when like he feels that they're really at risk, like a spitter or a blow-up guy enters their combat vicinity. But he won't shoot at standard infected. So that way it gives you some tactical layering there. And even if he gets hit, if it's not filterless, it doesn't matter. He's going to do his job, even if it means he's going to die doing it. So that's one of the important things that we kind of been battle testing, play testing, and it's survived 2 play tests so far. And the only issue that we ran into was just sometimes this button wouldn't update. Like if I clicked it, it would not be gray for other people unless the host did it. So that was fixed over the last 24 hours. So that's an example of something that we've kind of been like, play testing and stress testing and just kind of trying to figure out everything. And it's just a matter of just kind of going through and just hearing what people had to say in terms of like how the responsiveness of the grenade is, how the flare's working out for like, getting issues of like some people couldn't see it, some people could. It was just kind of hit or miss. So it's one of those things of just kind of a lot of bugs. So like if I set it to nighttime and I shoot the flare, in earlier playtests they didn't have the flare animation, but now they do. So Michael kind of got that in there, set up the flare gun, set the sound so it was louder. And all of that set up, all of it's replicated. We increased the duration from earlier playtests to 20 seconds plus 60 seconds plus 60-second cooldown. That might change, but it looks beautiful when you're actually playing, and you have to like have the coordination of like RTS operators of like, hey, we need a flare in the north grid. We don't know where they're coming from, because the flare acts as like a reveal wall. So yes, it allows RTS and operator players to see, but it basically reveals units on the minimap and like behind buildings and whatnot. So the idea is it's really, really useful for knowing, are you walking into an ambush or are you already in an ambush, and how screwed are you? So that's one of the important things that we brought over, and it's in and it's working and it's replicated. And then one of the other things that we've kind of been doing over the course of the week was, let me check my notes here. I brushed over that last time, and I will just show it here really quickly to retouch on it, was the, hold on, let me find it. Oh, yeah, basically the reload progress wasn't working for clients, so we fixed that, and we made it to where that was functioning for all operators. So like, as far as those little UX designs where it was only working for hosts for weeks, and it was a low priority bug, but we just needed to knock it out. Like it's coming to a time for the play test where we need to kind of like get everything presentable, so like someone that's not a developer can play the game, so it's hunting down all the bugs, all the issues, and getting it all functional like this. And then another thing was basically like this stuff where like the hit markers, where we went in and we put the hit markers in, so like when you take damage, it shows you hit them, so like it shows the white. There are some bugs with that I'm hunting down going into Monday related to the host. But you can see when I killed him, it turned red. So important like visual feedback stuff is like that we're getting online that's only worked on the host, or in some cases they've been kind of unreliable, and just kind of setting up the underlying like skinning and the coding so that way we can get a UI artist in there to make it look a little more aesthetically pleasing. Like what's the hit reticule? Where I can see, oh, I took a hit from that direction, like Call of Duty or any other game you play. And the idea is that visual will be improved. Now that we have it programmed in, it'll be assigned to an artist. Then from there, okay, great. We'll make it look sexy. We'll make it look a little more polished. Maybe make it a particle effect in the future. So there's a cool little system there where like he got Harukened, and then the operator got side blasted by his by the blow up guy's special ability to self kill himself, basically. And then one of the other things.
I think the funniest part is if you looked at the poor little operator that got blown up, he was covered in just juice from
and then I like that. That's one of the biggest things is figuring out the balance of that to where it doesn't look absurd. But you can see it's like little bugs like this that like Phoenix was posting. Like, you know, because we'll sit in the room and we'll play with people and just like, hey, I get this bug where if I'm playing as an operator and the MO10 or the medical tank gets destroyed, the circle stays. So it's like small little mundane things that just like it disappears for all clients, and just kind of tracking those issues down. And then the next major line item that we have was the network traffic optimization. That took up so much time in this week. I did not realize how complicated it can be for optimizing a game's network traffic. Is that this is what we started with. Let me see. Hold on. Let me bring up my chart. So the bottom one is basically what we started with on the 9th of this month. And then the top one is basically what we're at right now. But you can see like the highs and the lows are like a lot better for the top one. And it's a matter of just finding and identifying like, okay, why did we spike here? What happened at this second? It didn't happen here. And like as we turn things on, as we try different ways of sending variables to the network, what's cheaper, what's more expensive, it's experimentation. That's why sometimes you're like, hey, I need 20 guys or 10 guys for a network playtest right now. And then we'll go in and we'll test the method of sending network data, or like figuring out like what can we do less. Because like when we'd play the playtest, we'd get these like really, really crazy spikes like these. And this would be where like everyone starts lagging. Like literally people are jittering, people are teleporting, you know, that kind of stuff. So the idea is that like I sit there and I play the game with you guys and I'm just capturing data and I'm trying to figure out like what can we improve in terms of cost, and figuring out like how expensive are structures and how expensive are the engineers, and when they do movement, how expensive is that? When they tell the server they want to sprint, when they're going through and climbing a building, are they near a weapon market? Everything that you see has to be sent, replicated, and synchronized between all clients. So it's a matter of like figuring out like right now, like if I go over here, like spawning blood decals, so expensive. You know, playing the impact effects when the bullet spawns on someone or the bullet holes, super expensive. Playing the client weapon sound effects, like we have so many client calls and count calls. So we're hunting those down. We're changing code, we're optimizing, and we're getting it to a point where we can drop the highs and the lows substantially like lower. But at the same time, once all that's done, going back and optimizing and hyper optimizing tick rates and other things like that that can drive up the cost of the game and make your performance like, you know, crap and the pooper. So it's a constant juggling act of what we're going through, and we're just constantly looking back at older data and figuring out like, have we accomplished anything? How far have we come? Well, you can see like the total cost from the top to the bottom. I've cut a lot, but there's still a lot more to cut. Where I used to have like 1,700 and 1,200, it's just 4,201. Okay, what's so expensive about replicated movement? I've already put a fix in for today's playtest to fix that. You know, it's being proactive of like, okay, that didn't work. Let's try this. Hey guys, you want to do another playtest? Let's try it. Didn't work. You pivot. Constant alliteration, constant testing, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. So that's why when you guys see me in there just mumbling and talking to myself, it's like, oh, well, shit. That did not work out like I intended. You know, so like stuff like this, where I go to this graph and it's like, oh, the HESCOs are crazy, you know, expensive, and like the circle walls and a medic's movement, and then other stuff like that, and the ammo tent. So like, and then the RTS cameras. Like that was a big thing I optimized going into the week, where we were sending too much data when you guys were moving around, and that's something that's going to be a juggling act going into the next couple weeks is the mini-map updates and keeping those accurate enough, but slow enough for update rates to where you don't need to know where an RTS player is to the per second. So I can send that every second, every 2 seconds, and it won't really matter because we're interpolating it. So those are things that we're doing. They just kind of lower the cost, lowering the update hertz. So this next build, if we have a playtest later tonight, if people want us to, should see all these update hertz drop by 80%. And then I have to test if my conclusion was right. Did I break something? Is this not functioning correctly? Because to give you an example, so I don't go too into technical tidbits and lose people, because I know this is like a lot for some people. They're like, what is going on? So like an example would be is like something that was really expensive in our game was the faction manager. So I was able to get that down as being like nothing. Where like primary currency and like when you build units, it is like, oh my God, I have to update the population count for the infected and the circ right now. And if you built like 100 people and then you had the infected spawning in and there was 100 of them, all of that had to be tallied by the infection faction manager for when the day we inevitably make the infected playable, those fundamental systems are there, so we can maybe flip the table and have it to where everyone's playing co-op as the infected or something like that. I don't know. But the idea is that the foundation's there to facilitate it from the onset instead of an afterthought from an engineering standpoint, if you guys know what I mean. So that was really, really important for us. And like that was something that was a huge cost where like you guys would see like a wave start of infected, and then the network cost would go like 100 kilobytes, 200 kilobytes, 300 kilobytes in a second. That doesn't seem like a lot, but that is a lot for game design, where it's like you want to keep it below 50 kilobytes, 100 kilobytes per client for like the people in Australia, Germany. It's just too much data to send every second. And these are in seconds. So the idea is like this is 100 kilobytes. And the moment you get above like 100 to 200, it starts to lag a little bit. And then 200 to 300, you got rubber banding, you got people skipping around, you got the whole game destabilizing and coming apart, the seams for lag and instability. So that's why it's like, you'll see like right here, we had 300,000, we had the 300,000, sometimes we'd have 500,000 in random spikes a week ago. And that was my goal, is just Bob the Builder, just sort of chopping until I could basically get it to a point where I got a better baseline, and then from there keep hyper optimizing. It's taking a lot longer than I'd like, but it's unavoidable. From the end consumer standpoint, this is something that has to be done. Otherwise, you guys can't even enjoy and play the game because it requires an internet speed from NASA itself. So that's why I'm so keen on a network stress test every 2 or 3 days on our Discord, or like I'm like still on that over bugs. Because if the game doesn't play on co-op, what's the point? So my goal is like I gotta drop these spikes, like these spikes, and like all these spikes that you guys see here for the blues. My goal is to drop those by 80 to 50% over the next 2 or 3 days, and then immediately jump back into bug testing, bug fixing. And then Derek's working on the ability system, because by Tuesday, Wednesday, that's why I was late for this podcast, is I just had a meeting with Derek because he just finished up his work for today. And one of the biggest things for us is we're behind because I kind of sabotaged him, because there was so many changes that had to happen systemically behind the scenes that it required both of us in the hands in the cookie jar to get from the bottom graph to the top graph. Ideally, there's nothing else I have to pull him from. And the idea is going into Monday, Tuesday, if he's uninterrupted by me, then the idea is that we're going to be basically getting the Winners' XP boost system in there, which getting Winners' Cloak, getting the flashbang in for the Spec Ops and for Winters. And then, and the night vision passives for the Spec Ops. So those are the remaining abilities, and then we're done with the ability system. Thank God. And then at that point, it's maybe a day of like stress testing with you guys on the public Discord, and then we're immediately going into the operator. We're 1-800 ripping his ass out, and we're going to basically do the final version of the operator that I've been talking about for months, years. God knows how long I've been talking about, like a fucking broken record. Where one of the most important things to me is making sure it wasn't a gimmick. And I've accomplished that, but it's not enough. So it's one of those things where it's like, Or what I talked about previously is like if I go to this map, which I'll show briefly, so I don't want to beat a dead horse, but you figure if I go into, where are you? Where am I? This one. And I go to you. If it still works, crossing my fingers. And I go to like our old prototype. And I go to like this, we're going to be modernizing and upgrading this window, having walk-in animations, having it to where like you make classes over here and you like basically choose an appearance. It's going to lag because I haven't looked at these characters in a long time. Oh, shit. There's 3 males, 3 females, and 2 to 3 cosmetics per one. So you figure, and like some of these textures are the old ones because like it hasn't been updated. So like we're going to be going through and updating this, and then getting the. Let's see if it's going to let me. I don't think it's going to because the problem is that hold on, I might be able to fix it. Oh wait, yeah, hold on. I would do the player controller, and then I'd go to here, and then it would be the master HUD. I have to turn that off for just a second. So it would be the HUD, and it would be the top right info widget, and then I would it's not you. Damn it! It was show modified. It would be having a brain fart. Okay. Oh yeah. Let me try it this way. It would be global. There you are. References. And you. And then I would search for a top. Turn off modified. Play hard reference it. Clear the reference. Compile save. And then I'll just have to revert that. And it should no longer appear at the bottom. Oh, it crashed. Yeah, that's fun. Because it was never actually tested to run without that. That's a hard requirement now. Oh, I have one more other thing I can try. If that doesn't work, I can't show it this time, sadly, boys and girls. But I can show you a picture. So let me see if this works. Hold on. I'm going to top right. There's one other trick I can do. Oh, no, global. Why do I keep confusing that? I need my coffee. Okay, and then we're going to go down here. And we're going to set you to not block hits. So we're going to hidden, not enabled. I think the UI is blocking clicks. And because we don't have anything in RTS right now, that's probably why we don't see it there. There's nothing there to click currently. Let's see if it plays nicely. Yeah, all right. Score 1 for game developer. So it's going to be ugly because, again, this is like, we've been focusing on RTS and no one's touched this UI in months. But the idea is that like this is going to be your progression, and then you'll have abilities at the bottom. So you'll have like a 1-800 Build-A-Bear. But the idea is as you're leveling up your operator, which is what we're going to start going into sometime next week around Wednesday, Thursday, this entire UI is going to be ripped out. It's going to mirror something like Wildlands or Breakpoint. And the idea is as you level up your operator, you choose primary and secondary weapons. So like let's say I want to go with like the FN Scar, or like say a P90, and then you go and you customize it. It's not working right now. It's a little gunsmith, and it's not going to row. We basically mirrored kind of Tarkov or like a bunch of other games. So you have like attachments. You level up the weapon. You level up the operator separately. The operator level gives you talent points, attribute points, and weapon accessibility. The weapon levels give you attachments that allow you to fine-tune the weapon to make it to where like it has a little less recoil, vertical versus horizontal, versus magazine capacity, versus being able to zoom in on the scope. Now for the RTS, some of these things will be superficial and will have no effect on gameplay. Like a scope is not going to affect an RTS unit, but if someone possesses that operator, then that scope is going to be all the difference for them being able to sit up on a building with like a P90 and take headshots. So that's the direction we're going in, and I cannot wait. Based off of just generally, these are going to be like your operators for like RTS. You can just make a hero unit and then run him around as your commander with Winters and other people. You make an operator that leads every team. And the idea is that those attribute points and skill points are going to be like, you'll have like 6 or 7 stats of health, infection resistance, melee damage, accuracy, like small little stats that allow you to make it to where like, oh, he could be a heavy but a medic. He could be a sniper but an engineer. So in that way you have to kind of like pick and choose the abilities. Like so he can build, but he can also heal. So that's the direction it's going in for RTS and operator. So we'll start the operator around ideally sometime next week. And then we'll get the UI and the customization and the progression and all that stuff in. And then after that, we'll go back to every ability that's implemented for the RTS and then convert them over. So the operators can throw grenades, the operators get flashbangs, the operators can heal, and just kind of setting up that input system because it's going to require different things between RTS and operator stuff. Because you have to worry about client-side prediction, latency, and a bunch of other fun stuff. And let me revert that change before someone slaps me over the head for accidentally committing that tonight. So that's where we're going to be going into, and I'm very ecstatic for that. So I just wanted to kind of hit upon that. It's like that's the game plan going into next week. I know I said that we'd hopefully be on the operator by now, but there was so much stuff that came up with a network stress test that I had to pull people over, rearrange, roll with the punches, and be like, look, we got to fix what's already in front of us before we go ahead. And if I pull up the Trello list, like there's still stuff that I'm uncomfortable that needs to be identified and fixed. So like we've been chopping TBD. Like I think a couple weeks ago when I scrolled down this, I think I could scroll for like 3 to 4 seconds. It's like a half of what it's like a quarter of what it used to be for the TBD. These are like operator stuff. So like when we do the operator stuff next week, it'll be cut into half again. And then the last thing that remaining is like the mini-map polish for layers, fixing the bugs that you guys were reporting last night, applying some last-minute optimizations to the game, improving the building system here and there, making it so you can rotate the walls. The UI is one of the last things that we're doing right after the operator. It's like, control modes, adding in the power widgets and all the other stuff that you've grown accustomed to in Legacy. As like that's in our mind, we do these bugs, we do the operator stuff, we do this entire UI column, and then then we are able to put it in y'all's hands to play whenever the hell you want. That's when like there's no longer a beta password or some secret code, and you knock on the wall 5 times, and you get added into a playtest. It's gonna be like whenever the hell you want. So I just want to make that clear. In terms of like people that think we're floodgating or doing some other weird notorious thing. We're just trying to keep very precise, quick, rapid fire playtests where I could get 10 people in a room, 10 people are sharing their screens, have a good time, and immediately get responsive, quick bug fixes. Like be able to like, oh, that broke. Oh, that's broken. Take a GIF of that. Or I could take a GIF from their screen and I could be responsive and quick. Fix as many issues as possible. So that when it does come down to opening up the floodgates, it's a lot less bugless. Sorry, not but it's a lot bugless. It's like a more reliable, consistent experience all the way down the line. And that's my biggest thing to hit upon is making sure we're like getting that and not making the same mistakes of like, leaving a lot of systems in flux, leaving some things where they're not fully fleshed out, like the climbing that we talked about, like the building on buildings, like the reliability of engineers, where like there's some things that people have brought to my attention over the last 24 to 48 hours, and after I finish these network stress tests, I need to get in there and do some last-minute tweaks to the engineers, their focus logic, and some building movement logic, because it's in some cases they can fail, and I need to add more redundancies there. One thing that I will hit upon before we open it up for Q&A in just a moment is I'm going to bring over my notes. Oh, yeah, actually, I've actually hit upon everything, so we can actually open up the Q&A probably a little bit sooner. Hopefully people have shit tons of questions for us. So I don't know, Krieg, Durvar, anything you guys want to add in? You guys have been playing in the playtest. Krieg, you've been playing it like a fiend. I don't know, is there anything you kind of want to throw into the conversation about like what you've kind of experienced playing it? I don't know if he's there.
I mean, for me, right, it's all about the fact that so much brilliant work has already come to fruition,
Hear you.
Like the fact that you've come from buggy mess to now is honestly, it's just amazing.
So I guess when it comes down to it, I always take a more skeptical outlook in terms of it, because I always feel like I'm a perfectionist, so it's one of those things where like I'm constantly just like, oh, this is not good enough. That's not good enough. I need to work on this. We need to change that. You know, we had a person join the Discord the other day. He was not impressed. He joined the public playtest, and there was probably like a network stress test. And there was like 8 guys in the room, and I was just like, he was like, how do I play? And I was like, here, you do this, and here's the code, do that. And he left the room, and he was like, thanks guys for letting me play, and left. And I was like, he did not like it. And everyone in the room was like, I don't think he liked it either. And I was like, well, fuck. I wish he would have told me what he didn't like. He ran away real fast, but I think he didn't want to be mean. I don't really give a shit about that.
Yeah, to each their own, I suppose.
Those kind of like reactions are fine. Like, yeah, you could do that, but it's one of those. To me, I need the dialogue. I need the conversation back and forth of like, you know, this is shit. Leaves room. Okay, like how do I? What do you want me to fix? What's the problem? You know, I get that a lot for the UI, and I'm like,
exactly.
Can you give me some actual intel? Like Winters is a really big advocate for like our UI is shit, and I'm like, okay. You know, fine. Well, you know, I put him in charge of the UI. He's been working on that. And he'll have something to show for when we get to that point in a week or two for doing the UI. But it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, no, like I need people to actually level with me and explain these things. I mean, I get it. Some people don't want to, and that's their, you know, like whatever. Like that's her. They're not, you know, whatever they want to do. But, you know, it's just one of those things where it's just like that is always so frustrating as a game developer when someone does that and you're like, fuck. Like, okay, thanks. Bye. What were you going to say, Durvar?
Oh, I mean, it's just, yeah. Introspective is sort of something that is vital, you know? You need someone to give out the reason as to why they think it's shit.
Because you figure, I love critiques. I have no problem with critiques. Of basically being like, I don't like this, I don't like that. But I guess it's just one of those things where people are so used to being ignored by game developers. I think is part of the problem. So then they're just like, I'm not gonna even bother. Leaves room. You know what I mean? It's kind of like what you and I talked about. Like a lot of developers are so prideful they don't want to actually like listen to what people say. So a lot of games like think their shit doesn't stink, and they don't listen to the community. They don't even like level with them. So there's no communication back and forth until at the 11th hour, and they're having money issues or some other thing. We could name so many studios like that. We talk about that a lot in closed rooms. So I've always wanted to be the exact opposite of that, where it's like, I don't give a fuck. I'll jump in a room if someone left me a negative review on Steam. I'll jump in any room with anyone that plays the game. Like I'll be sitting in the general column just chilling with people, talking about the game or playing other games. We've been playing Project Zomvoid, for example. You, me, Krieg, and Durv are random people on the Discord, and then with the Patreons. So you know what I mean? Like have a good time. Let's talk about this game. Let's talk about other games. You know what I mean? Speaking of that, I'm so guilty of not playing with you guys. Yeah. I've been so in the fucking trenches the last week that like I bought a server for these kids for all of us to play. I played probably like 10 minutes and less. What'd you say, Durvar? Yeah. It's been like 10 minutes. I literally bought a server for all of us to play. And then like the last week, I was like, I gotta fucking go hard. To the point where it was just kind of like, I'll see y'all later.
We're gonna work down the mines. We're gonna work down the mines.
But it's like, I need to play some Project Zomboid this week because I've been meaning to play it with you guys too. But Krieg, were you gonna say something earlier when you unmuted? Oh, he muted again. I said, were you going to
Sorry, say it again?
Oh, my bad. On things based off of what you've seen, what you've been playing? Like, how do you feel about it? No bullshit.
I just get a serotonin boost every time I beat your co-op, like hardcore mode. It's just like, yeah, you won't beat it this time, guys. And then I just start building like a star fortress in the middle of your map. It's just great. But no, there's been a lot of changes between the AI and the special infected. It's developing nicely. Oh yeah, 100%. Like you can tell the fluidity of like the battles are going a lot more nicely, especially with this new map.
Have you been playing on that map secretly?
I noticed there's a lot more changes even back then. Yeah, of course I have. I'm always delving in the files and looking at stuff I shouldn't be doing. But
how's this new map been going with you? You been playing it by yourself or in co-op?
I love it. I'm a single player because I have no friends. But no, it's great. Like, yeah, no, the fact that we have so much land to build on, and the choke points that are in there, like Efron did a spectacular job at giving us a lot of different variation or potential to create essentially our own little battle plan to funnel people in or to catch people out. It works very, very nicely. And I assume, like, in the playtest when we've had like about 8 to 10 people in that map, like with the fire teams that we can have going around securing it when we have breach, or just overall setting it up, it just is very fluid. It does help a lot as well, because like in single player it's manageable, but there's parts of that map where you have to keep the zones up and you get a money bonus based on kill. And in multiplayer, that is like a big incentive to get it locked in with everyone. Yeah, and everyone gets roles. Everyone fits into their roles nicely. Usually in games like RTS, especially, everyone's kind of like in disarray for the most part. It is chaos. It is beyond chaos, but in this, it's surprisingly going well. Like people have been very fluid with it. It was a bit difficult at first with the original Horde map. And when people were getting used to it because co-op was a new thing, it was very temperamental. The AI had a lot of quirky moments. But since then, you can, it's been about, a month and a half from then, and the development for it has been skyrocketing. So yeah, you and the team have done a very good job.
The team appreciates that because we've been pouring our blood, sweat, and soul into this game. Like,
you'll never beat me though.
I'm gonna
make it hard.
We have a competition. So me and Krieg, literally, he comes back and he's like, "I beat the game. I have this new exploit. I like min-maxed everything, and then I'll see what he did, and then I fix it." And then he'll go and do it again, and we have a competition. But the problem is, Krieg, you're a dick. Because every time I up the ante to make it harder, because you're saying it's too easy, everyone in the public Discord is like, stop it. It's too hard.
I know, I've had to apologize.
To so many people in the public playtest, because you're like, why do you keep making this harder? Because Krieg keeps saying it's too easy. Because he shows you this like cheese where he puts like 3 turrets on this location, and then it's GG autoplay.
It's the way I position everything. I can't wait to like fully cover that map. There's gonna be tents all over that thing. There's gonna be barbed wire fences. It's gonna be my magnum opus.
And that's the biggest thing, is like you figure it's gonna be interesting because now like when Bob plays and you play, you guys are really big builders. So, you can have Bob assigned to the airfield, and then you could take, say, the center regional HQ or the medical research facility. And then at that point, you have really 2 great RTS players. Ford's really good at it too, Riffiel. And then that way you guys can divvy it up and be like, hey, like, you guys can all, but then we have some overlap, and we can like have people on load. Like, some people need to come over and help. It's a beautiful synergy that we're building towards. And like then you add in the operators. It's amazing. Like you figure, like, it was so cool to watch the roaming operators that were like doing the little missions. And then you had the RTS players jumping in, following them in like fire teams, and like the collaboration there. It was just unheard of. Like I just never played it, and like people were having so much fun. It was like people were so like giddy when we were playing it the other night, or it was just like that was one of the best moments I've had playing the game. Was when we had all of that going, and we had flares firing off, and the kill teams running around, and we were trying to hunt down the infected. You missed the Creek because you suck. I don't know where you were.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
I have a busy life. But it's okay. I always come back and send you a screenshot of how I absolutely destroyed your playtest. But yeah, no, it's great to see as well. Like it's gonna be like when everyone is able to play it with their friends, and it's more accessible.
Moment where we have
like,
so many people on the public Discord that we have to make more rooms. We have to make a bot to auto create rooms. That is gonna be one of the best days ever. When you get on and you're looking on Discord and people are just in your game playing, having fun. There's nothing. Like I got on a couple like recently, and I saw people playing it, like the Patreons, a couple other people were playing it. That was the coolest thing ever, in terms of basically just generally like seeing that, and like they're having fun. I join the room and say hi, and then I fuck off and go back to do game design. You know what I mean? Where it's like a super chill environment kind of deal. So yeah, I cannot wait. until the point where we open this up. And it's just a matter of just getting in those last layers that we've been talking about for the last hour. And then I'll feel confident in putting it out for the average user, because I then will have plenty of battle testing and fixes and UI changes and small little quality of life changes that need to come in. Like, it's so hard to play the game right now because the hover tips don't work and the unit icons don't render all the time. So it's like little stuff like that in Legacy that you don't really think that much of, that when those come in, it'll make all the difference. Of like, I've had people play the game and they're like, where are my engineers? Where are my assaults? And it's like, yeah, embarrassing. I know exactly what the problem is. I know exactly how to fix it. It just comes down to manpower. And it's one of those things where we're saving the UI for the absolute end of the playtest. To just basically put the wrapping on the, put the final icing on the cake and then shove it out the door so people can play it and appreciate it with their friends. So I think.
Yeah, I can't wait to see people betray one another and close the gate.
Oh
In
my God,
only
you
friend
guys kept
lobbies
doing
though.
that where we'd have operators
Just
or
keep
RTS
going.
players, so you guys would put it on manual, and then you'd shove the gate closed while people were running to retreat, and then everyone would get murdered. You're a
I was
horrible
doing it.
person.
I was doing it way back when we finished like looking for bugs.
Yeah.
We were just messing around.
It's
It's like
it's
closing
cool,
gates
and
for
then it's
people
good
because
at the same
I would
time.
triple
Yeah,
lock
because
the
like you figure
gates.
we'd have RTS players, we'd
Yeah,
have like
yeah.
a fire team of operators of some RTS players, and everyone would just run back into the base. And we have that green light, yellow light system. And when a light goes yellow, that means an RTS player went to that gate and put it in manual mode, which means that they're probably going to lock you out. So if you weren't fast enough or communicating with your RTS players, then they'd lock you outside the base. You'd be like, dude, I need to get in. You need to open this door. I'm going to die.
I would
Thank
intentionally
you.
lock
That's
you out,
so
Robert.
nice of you. Oh, it warms my heart.
Yeah, I always looked him out actually. Whenever I saw Dart as an
Everyone,
operator,
I'm
I'd
pretty sure
lock
it's
the
a
gate.
pastime by now to lock me outside the base when we're playing. Like, oh, got him. So yeah, fun. Anyway, okay, so we've gotten enough of that. Let's get. Is there anything else you two want to hit up on, or anyone else? I don't know if there's other people that have played the build. I guess when we do the Q&A, you guys are welcome to raise your hands and talk about what you've been playing, what you like and what you don't like. For like, I know Ford and Riffiel, Arrogant, Dark, Silver, all you guys have played it. Herbert, so you guys are welcome to like come in and talk about, raise your hand and talk about how you feel about the build and whatnot. It's always, I want to just kind of get that out there, like having a dialogue. So we're gonna segue into the next part. We're gonna take some questions, and then from there we'll move into the end, and then we'll figure out if people want us to do a play test. So we have a question on YouTube that's been sitting there for an eon, and then I'll get to the people on Discord. So someone on YouTube asks, if I'm not wrong, the only objective of the game is to kill patient zero, right? Could we like have a total domination option where we clear the whole map of zombies? So that's something that is coming in phase 3 for the new pandemic. Like that's a huge point of criticism feedback that we've gotten over the years. Is that Chelsea's cool? She's our mainline objective for pandemic, but people want an alternate game mode where it's more like 28 weeks later, where it's like you just want to kill everything. You just want to blow the city up. You don't want to deal with Chelsea's lieutenants. And then so that's our idea is to facilitate that, to compromise on that, is when we get to phase 3, we're just going to go balls to the wall crazy with custom options. Mutilators, turn off blow-up guys, turn off spitters, change their health, change their movement speed. When do they come into the game? What day? How long does it take for them to be built? That kind of stuff. So if you want to turn it into Romero's, like everyone walks, no one runs, you could do that. Turn off all the blow-up guys, spitters, juggernaut, leviathans, little guys, and lieutenants, spitters, whatever. And then make it to where everyone walks, triple the infected amount to compensate for that. Then you do that. Because by turning off those, it frees up the pot from a standard infected. Then by slowing them down that much, you double or triple their health, theoretically, to make it to where it's still a challenge. So that's the direction we're going to go into when we get to phase 3 of implementing pandemic mode again, where it's like this is like our test bed or incubator of our own little like unique horde mode. And then the moment we can, what we've built here is going to directly translate over the pandemic. We're building like the doctrines, and we're going to be building the doctrines. But right now we're building the ability system. We're building the core fundamentals of an RTS game with replication support: shooting, reloading, dying, healing, abilities, all that fun stuff. And then once all that's baked in there, phase 2, vehicles, airstrikes, call-ins, all that fun stuff. Then phase 3 is what you're talking about. So we'd like by the time we get to phase 3, you guys would have like ideally 1 or 2 of maps like this to keep you held over. Because the idea is that once Efron finishes this map, We're going to aim for a new map every couple of months, depending on just time frame and how long it takes for us to get this one done. It's the golden standard. And then, so by pandemic, then at that point, they're going to shift over to San Francisco North, and they'll start production of finalizing that. And we'll take a small little grid like this size, and we'll just make that a playable region for pandemic mode. And then we'll do the same thing we did here in phase 1 and 2, where it's like, okay, let's take a small little slice of gameplay. Let's add in civilian evacuations. Let's add in dynamic civilian groups. Let's add in Chelsea, there's custom game modes, all the other fun stuff, and then get everything working. Get it where everyone likes it. It's fun. The co-op is working, and then scale up and unlock the rest of the city. And then start benchmarking and profiling for the larger city, and it'll come in waves of like phase 3. It's going to be layers, per se. So it's going to be interesting because again, like you figure systemically or feature-wise, phase 3 is not that complicated. It's just more so the play testing, the network bandwidth testing. We've learned so much over the last 5 years of development that now all that needs to be applied in terms of like this rebuild and taking into consideration years of feedback from Steam reviews and people on the Steam discussion forums on Discord of like things like a civilian evacuations, things like the Chelsea problem of her being too stupid, the lieutenant problem of them being stupid, the custom game options, which, just to clarify on that, it's in our announcement on Discord. It's an alternate start mode, and the idea is that instead of having Chelsea start the virus, it's a terrorist attack that like sets off like Resident Evil, like bombs all over the city, and they're laced with the Pangu virus, and that's what starts the viral outbreak instead of Chelsea starting it. So that's the direction we're going in, and you could stop some of the bombs, but you can't stop all of them. So eventually, you'll have like 3/4 or half of the city like in chaos, and then that way you have to just roll with the punches of this alternate start mode, and that would facilitate the common criticism we've got of like people don't want Chelsea or Lieutenant sometimes. Some people want to play Mercer and Prototype. Not everyone does. So that's my compromise. So we're gonna open up the Discord. Anyone have their hands raised or any questions? Oh, Herbert, I think. Where'd he go? There he is. Okay. Herbert, you have the floor. Hello.
Hello, good evening. So I have probably asked this question like 28 times, but since dementia hits me every week, so since we are now in the rework of the game, have your views on the modding changed? Like, are you planning to integrate it from the beginning so that the game is moddable at later stages? Because we actually all know that modding can incredibly increase a game's longevity and popularity.
So, when it comes to modding, that's an excellent question. As it stands right now, no. And I'll explain why. And then you can kind of maybe understand where we're coming from. So when it comes to the modding, Durvar can back me up on this, is that if you add it too early, some indie projects get overwhelmed because not only are you developing the game, but you're also developing the modding tools and their support and making sure that they're regularly updated. So then there's a juggling of problems where like not only are you working on the game and its features, we have to worry about, are you going to break someone's mod? And are you going to push that content out? And for 2 programmers during the job of probably 2 to 3 dozen, for like a Broken Arrow probably has like 20 to 30 people working on their programming. So it's one of those, and they don't have modding as an example. So it's one of those things where like we're taking it in baby steps of like there are some systems in the game that can be made moddable, but it's one of those things where like we don't want to open up that can of worms until we're ready. And in our mind, that's after the campaign, as icing on the cake, around the time of the early access, leaving early access. Because we agree with you. Modding is important. Modding adds so much replay value to games. I wouldn't like other games like Left 4 Dead and other games, like they add so much life to the game. Project Zomboid, where it makes you want to come back to the game 5, 10, 15, 20 years later. Same thing with DayZ for Arma. I bought Arma. What was it? Arma 2 back in the day because of DayZ, and then I learned to love Arma 2, and I was like, oh my god, this game's amazing. So it's one of those things where, yeah, absolutely modding is important to any game's ecosystem, but we're waiting for that, those problems present themselves, and then the third thing is we're waiting to see what happens with the Fortnite modding SDK, because what typically happens is that we get their engine improvements and their innovations about 6 months to a year later. So if we sit and wait, Epic will perfect the system, perfect the pipeline, and then we can benefit from it a year down the line about making it to where like, oh, it's very plug and play. It's very easy to make our own SDK. It's very easy to make maps, and that's kind of like the approach we've taken to it. I know that's not a popular one, but I have to just weigh the pros and cons of taking that versus over encumbering the team based off of what's going on right now. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So, are you trying to say that it will not be much of a problem to introduce modding and creating the modding framework later in the
some
development?
things will have to be reworked, sure. But it comes down to basically like, yeah.
Because what I was getting at is that how I imagined it is that you would have to start with the framework for modding pretty early without actually releasing modding tools, because we do know it would break the mods during the development in such early stages.
Examples: Insurgency, Squad. Every time there's an update, they have to recompile their mods. Otherwise,
yeah, that's true.
That's
That's true for every game that I've ever played. Like every time you get a game update or Bannerlord, like Bannerlord has a huge problem with modding because it's supposed to be a very moddable game, but every single update breaks it.
That comes down to the ecosystem and how the engine is programmed, and that's why we're kind of waiting to see what happens with the Fortnite SDK, because then that requirement of user-generated content for Fortnite will benefit the engine, and then hopefully, ideally, systemically, they'll change something, they'll improve something to make it to where it's a lot more easier to be plug and play. So we're kind of waiting to see what comes of that. And at the same time, it's one of those things of not over-encumbering the team in terms of the amount of resources and time that we have, because that is a long-term engagement. And Durvar can attest to this because we've talked about this in the past, is that he's had games where they added modding in the first year of an early access release. And what was it? No, don't say the game actually, Durvar. But like, could you explain what you ran into?
I won't say. Yeah, I won't say the game's name, but they released their SDK, and the problem is that because they're early access and every time they update, the modding framework always changes. At this point, they're on a different version of Unreal Engine because their SDK goes through Unreal Engine, and it's just broken everything. You could mod the game, but the modding tools are still there, but you can't mod the game now because they've gone to a different engine.
Documentation and a bunch
so
of
it's
Oh, that's right.
completely it's busted absolutely
so like
everything. While putting the modding framework there early on is a viable idea, when there's an engine change, unless the modding framework itself is updated for the engine change, then it's going to break absolutely everything. So it'll be more than just recompiling your mods. Your mods may have to be remade entirely, and it would just be way too much work.
Okay, now it makes a lot more sense, to be honest.
Alright, so let me go to the next person. My life. Let me pop you up. Is he there? Hello.
I'm here, don't worry.
What's up?
Alright, hold on. I got plenty of questions to ask. Alright. Infected PvP. Will there be infected PvP with human commander and infected commander in the future? Far in the future, since we're only at phase 1, I've been told.
That one just yet until we finish co-op and we figure out just generally how far we can push the engine. It's something that me and Derek have talked about. The bare minimum that him and I are talking about back and forth consistently is at the bare minimum trying to figure out just being able to play as the infected and then a shared shared infected co-op against the Circ. But it's one of those things where like we're using co-op as a test bed, it's a stepping stone. And then based off of the end of 1.3, we'll have more like the graphs I was showing you, other stuff like that. Some things are just not technically possible yet.
Yeah.
Where it's like you figure some things you can't simulate or keep concurrently in games nowadays. So like you'd have to have like a NASA supercomputer. So we're constantly looking at system specs, network specs, and just team scope to be like, okay, what can we realistically do? And what you're talking about is a good idea. It's on our wish list, but we can't execute at this time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What else did you have for questions?
All right.
Okay.
I have more. Command and operators. Will there be an option to select command, be a commander or commanders, and or operators, such as situations where there's a single commander and he'll be able to build friendly units, build vehicles for you to take, and other situations like that.
When it comes to that, the way we split that up is the control mode options, where you could change the game to be like only you could split the money up so it comes in evenly, or you can have it equal. Everyone can access the money at all times. And then the second thing that addresses that is the control modes, where like you can gift units that can showgun, and only people that buy those units can control those units. And then the other mode is what we typically play with, is the open mode, where everyone can control everyone's units at all times. And it's going to come down to each group and how they decide they want to play the game. If you want, Bob and Sally to be in charge of building units, then they're in charge of building units. And if you don't trust them to do it completely, then you turn on that control mode, you allocate them money, and then you figure if they do whatever they have to do, and then something like that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
What else do you have?
More units infected. Would there be a way to have more units and such and more infected? Because right now it definitely feels like you're being swarmed, but usually it's just a straight line of infected or maybe a few special infected behind.
Experimental or the current rebuild?
Just in presumably experimental when you're in commander mode and you can build units and stuff like that.
Quite a bit. There's a lot more infected in the horde mode. That's going to still keep seeing improvements and changes, because that's one of the things that we failed on in the previous experimental, is that we focused too much on infected versus dynamic civilian groups in combat. So if you turn off all the dynamic civilian groups in pandemic on experimental, the game gets substantially harder, because now Chelsea's not splitting her resources between you, the civilians, and Cirque. She's like, okay, I'm just going to kill the Cirque. So it's one of those things where, like, on phase 3, the do-around, the redo, is to address that and maybe change some things so she doesn't prioritize them as much, and she sees you more of like the primary person, and that the civilians are more of an annoyance, where she'll only actively seek them out if they're making themselves a problem or if they're immediately in her way. But otherwise, you're going to be 90% of her resources. Does that make sense?
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah. One last question.
Yeah.
How will I presume this is also a question you can't really answer, but how will special infected play in the infected co-op mode, presumably, if there is?
It would be the same way you play as the classes, where their abilities for spitting and everything else would be abilities, or like, so like the blow up guy would be a blow up ability, the spitter would be like a sniper, so you just shoot normally, and then you'd have like a special ability. It's one of those things where we're still trying to, like, we have a basic idea, a basic outline, but it's still very speculative until we get to that point. Because at this point, playing as the infected is potentially a year or so out. And because in our mind, it's finishing 1.3, which is everything we've talked about today. Then it's the campaign. Then it's world events. Then it's Pierce and Natalie. And then at that point, that's 1.5. That's in the future for what the kind of stuff you're talking about, is playing as the infected potentially. That's like a long-term goal for us on the team. What else did you have?
Yeah. Also, I just thought of one last question. Will there be any special objectives, or is that also planned in the future?
Special objectives for us are world events in 1.4. Another special objective for us are basically the what was it called? The bounty board, which we need to bring back in 1.3 or 1.4. And then it was the bounty board.
The bounty board?
Remember that? Do you remember that back in the day? Bounty board was
an
asset that we put in that basically you build a tent or a circ tent, and the idea is you'd click on it and it would assign you dynamic missions in the level. Hunt down and assassinate, and a special infected that had a little bit higher health and a guard associated with them. It wasn't as high quality as I liked it to be, so we ended up removing it for a time where we could basically hyper polish it and make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, like a little bit more like fleshed out. An example would be like how Red Dead Redemption does their bounties, where like I want to make it a little bit more built up, a little bit more attention to detail put into it. The same reason why we removed Pierce and Natalie, because they were just reskinned civilians. So it comes down to me
Mhm.
of scope and resources, where it's like that's something that I'm looking into for 1.4 is after co-op we can use all of that like extra attention and revenue and all of that and reinvest it into the game in areas that are sorely needing more depth, like what you're talking about. So what else did you have for questions?
I think the only one I really have than that is hold on. Building combat. There we
Building
go.
combat. Yeah.
Will that be?
You're-
Yeah, because I have played the game and units die extremely fast against other humans with guns, obviously, and I presume there'd be
Can I
building
elaborate on that
combat
a
to
little bit?
counteract that, like cover.
So, on the building combat, you're talking about
Uh,
gun-to-gun warfare, like the civilians shooting you or the raiders.
yeah, hostile civilian faction versus
So,
the SERP.
when it comes to that system, and I wish Michael was here so he could address that more accurately, is that we. How do I word this? It's really shit. In terms of basically, we agree with you. Where it's one of those things where we need to, when we introduce the civilians of running around with guns and some other systems, one of the major. Oh,
I've
I
read.
summoned you. Do you want to talk about what we want to do with the weapons versus the civilians and the Cirque fighting each other and how it's really, really like not what we'd like it to be in Legacy and what we want to do, like in Phase 2 to make it more like presentable, more like balanced? Throwing you right into the meat grinder.
So the biggest thing with the legacy, yeah. The biggest thing with legacy when it came to the gun balance, it was very desirable. I didn't get to spend a lot of time with the unit, like actual like gun to gun combat. It was
Yeah.
really the primary focus was the gun to infected combat and the infected to gun combat.
Mhm.
And so when we put in the civilians, they kind of have their base numbers and how the damage resistance worked. It was set
Yeah.
by a caliber base, and it worked well for the cert against the infected. But when it was unit
When
against
against
like
the
another gun unit, they were
yeah.
just doing shit damage. And
Yeah.
so the route that we've gone this time, it's broken up to where I can go in per weapon and set how much damage it will do to a target, like per character.
Yeah, that would
So
definitely
it's a
work.
lot more. Yeah, it's just, what's going to change is definitely how it feels. The only thing is kind of finding that sweet spot where it's not too spongy and it's not
And not
too
too
realistic.
yeah.
Because the thing with Company of Heroes is that they miss so many damn shots. Like
Mhm.
it's bad. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to look at them as example because they miss so many shots and there's only so many that hit, and that's why you have to take so
And to
much
kill.
infantry to take out one squad. And how this game, it's not a squad system in the sense of where you build a unit and there's 6 guys in the squad. It's you build one
Yeah.
unit and that's your unit.
Delicate.
So it's
Yeah.
very independent. So yeah, it's a very delicate process, but we're taking steps to make sure that we can balance that in a way that gives more,
Nuance?
what's the word? It can be more diverse because the issue is, it was just one-sided. Guns were always going to win in Legacy.
And it was
That's
whoever
just
shot
how it
first.
is. And if you
Yeah.
put a gun against a
It was
gun, it was
Yeah.
just whoever
and
shot.
Who has more
like
units,
literally, if you
either
had too
way.
many assaults, somehow you'd lose half of them. Sometimes the 3 guys that were sitting in a corner, and like me and Michael talked about that quite a bit, and we were like,
Mhm.
that just does not work. So that was one of the things where we were just like, do we fix this or do we rip off the band-aid and start the rebuild? We decided to rip off the January band-aid January 6th, and we were like, fuck it, we just need to do the rebuild, do the co-op. When we get to Phase 3, make sure the underlying systems are developed and fleshed out enough to facilitate what he's talking about, but at the same time, make it to where the AI and other systems are a little more conscious of their limitations, and they're not as John Wicky. Whereas the idea is that like they just snap, everyone's dead.
Yeah.
Snap, everyone's dead. And that was a big issue in Legacy, like we were talking about, where you'd have a little bird, and it would get wrecked by dynamic civilian groups. Like one guy
Mhm.
with an M4, your little bird's gone. And with the new system that
Yeah.
we've kind of implemented with this rebuild, is we have it to where again he could do what he's talking about, but he could take it another level further, where he could make a weaker. And this kind of hit on this too much, but like we're giving the dynamic civilian groups more civilian-based weapons, weaker weapons that don't make sense
Yeah.
like California weapons, like smaller capacity ARs M4s
Oh,
that are
no.
like civilian grade,
Yeah.
more bolt action, more slower firing guns. So there's an actual separation between Cirque and the civilian population. Yes, you're still going to have, yeah, and
That's
that will
press the
address
military.
some of your concerns, but you're still going to have militants running around that are
Mhm.
ex-military that would have access to fully military grade equipment. But they're going to not be like everyone's not going to have an M4. Everyone's not going to have a Benelli shotgun. You know, there might be your more home grade pump shotguns and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So then that way it'll make a little bit more sense in terms of the power balance. And with enough of them, they could overwhelm you. And that's the direction we're going in. We're like, if they band together, you're going to have a problem. One or two or three, you can put them down pretty quickly and pretty efficiently. But once you actually start turning the entire map against you,
Yeah.
then you're still going to be screwed unless you just start doing a bombing campaign and indiscriminately just MRSing every neighborhood where they don't agree with you. And that's kind of the beauty of the game that we're going towards,
Yeah.
where it's like, be a good guy or be a bad guy. And I think that resolves the issue that you're talking about. Would you
That's
say?
my plan, at least. That's my
Oh,
plan,
Lord.
at least. Just civilian casualties.
Oh
What
my
are
God.
they?
What have I created? But yeah, so what do you think about that, my life? Does that address your concern?
Yeah, I did. But also, I asked about building combat because it makes sense for a squad of SERP to take over building, fortify it, and just start picking
Have
off
you been
infected, hostile
watching the recent
civilians, and stuff like
streams at
that.
all?
Negative. I've been kind of on this game. I left a while ago, came back, played it a little bit offline,
Okay, I'm gonna
and
show you
that's
something
what
real
it is.
fast. So if I
Mhm.
go to hold on,
Eat.
my OBS is acting weird. Give me a second. Why did it open up two copies?
All right, take your time.
Okay, I'm not gonna close you just in case it screws me.
Like, Krieg can agree with me. Flamethrowers
Oh,
fix all the
Jesus.
problems.
Absolutely.
Oh, they do. Yeah, no, they just kind of like turn to ash and float away
Okay,
in the
so if you
wind.
look at my
It's
share
great.
screen, I'm gonna
Yeah,
demonstrate
that's
something,
great.
and then you can tell me if this is what you're talking about. So one of the things that I was talking about earlier in the Q&A was making it to where like people could understand they can enter in through a door if it works. And then basically they'd come out
Yeah.
at preset exit points. And this map was kind of like a vertical slice for prototyping. So the idea is that now,
Oh, yeah.
like Ford loves to do this. He's like the Bob the Builder of exploiting the AI, and that's one of the things that I had to hunt down and fix going into like next week. Is that if you block some of the entry points or other weird things they like to do, that it systemically breaks the AI. But
Mhm.
he's posting those memes. But the
I
idea is
love
that
it.
like those buildings that are flat will facilitate you building up here. You can build. They were building up here on these construction sites.
Yeah.
So when it comes to building combat, that's
Mhm.
most. I don't want to do a garrison system. I don't think there's a place for that in Cepheus Protocol. Based off, I don't like auto battlers. I absolutely hate automated stats where it's
Oh,
like
yeah, no.
we've all played Total War. We know how bullshit they are. They don't approximate.
Oh, yeah.
They don't take into skill. They don't take into account skill placement. They just look at arbitrary like you're gonna win, you're gonna lose, and then I've won 8 out of 10 battles playing with Duravar or Chris where it's like it said I was gonna lose like horribly, and I wrecked their face. So it's one of those things where like that. I guess you could say that pre-justice comes over to Cepheus, where it's like, for me, if I'm gonna do a system like that, I'm just gonna just make it to where you can physically enter the structure, you can physically go on the roof, you know, and then that way, people you can have like no, the what is that game? The fuck. What's the zombie game with the not 2 Days Gone? Help me out there, Var. Dying Light. Yeah. Yeah, Dying Light, where you can see like
Dying Light.
the military in that game built on top of the buildings, and I want to facilitate that because people have been asking for that for years, and it's one of those things where like, you know, for this rebuild, one of the things that I set out to do for this little center apex is figure out what would that look like, what kind of technical depth is associated with it,
Mhm.
because like stuff like this is just really hard to set up. Well, you have to set up like a crap ton of actors. So
Yeah.
going into that new map, I have this system prototype. But me and Derek are going to get together in the next week or two and take it a step further and make it to where like you place one actor and then you make a spider web of interconnected points and they connect to all the nav points, and then you're able to basically have a dynamic system where like they can enter through this building and then know they can come through that door. But at the same time, your Cirque understand they can open a latch up here and come up here and start building. So I think that addresses what you're getting at. Anything else you want to hit upon?
Other than AI improvements and how they're smarter and they're not going to just walk into a wall like
Oh
they
yeah,
used
that's
to.
something that we're definitely hunting down, eradicating as we go. The people in the room can be, can share some of the. There's still some issues that we have. We're still actively hunting those down. Those are some of the issues that Ford and other people have brought to my attention through their continual exploiting of the game. And it's one of those things where like I have to like if I build on these white spaces, this one, this one, this one, and then you close off this area, close off that area, close off this area. Sometimes the AI overthink the situation and they start just collecting here to here to over here because they don't understand go for a suicide run. They're so they're trying to do self-preservation so much and they don't realize you're going to have to lose people. So I'm gonna have to go in there and fix that. So like I have to do another 1 or 2 more days of stress testing for the network bandwidth, and then one of the things I have to seek of fixing is that where it's like do the final icing on the cake of improving their attack logic, so they understand you're gonna die. Some of you are gonna die, but eventually you're gonna break through. So yeah, that's the general idea, and they don't understand that. They just I can't reach the spot. I'm going to stand here. So it's a little bit better from Legacy because if you remember in Legacy, they would dance. You ever notice that? Where they'd run back and forth along your wall. And then finally they turn into a... Yeah, that was the bad old pathfinding. That doesn't happen at all in this version. This problem is that you figure they're like, I don't want to die. And they just like sit there and wait at the bottom of the ramp. So again, I'll fix that going into this week, ideally. Okay, any other questions before we move on to the next cat? No, we have a bunch of questions.
I think I should be good. Other than would infected also try to take building tops?
They'll yeah, no, they don't
build. Oh, really? They build up there?
And smack your stuff in and then jump off. Building long term, maybe. It's one of those things where the only mode that they're going to build in is pandemic, and I'm taking a different approach on that, where the idea is that the previous system was very flawed and pissed people off because the pods were not localized to structures. So I'll give you a quick example before I go off on another speech, and everyone in the Discord is like, please answer my questions. But the idea is that like if I put this, oh wait, I'm not sharing my screen. If I put a pod at this blue location, and you see the white outline here, that pod is now going to kill everyone in the zone. Even if you blockade off of this area and it's closed off, everyone dies. People behind your line die except you, because again, it was a constant tick. So what needs to happen this time around, based off of just talking to people in the rooms and just seeing what people want, is making it to where this zone is going to have an AOE around it. So if you click on a pod, it's going to show all of the buildings that it's passively infecting. And the idea is that it's killing people in this building, that building, this building, and that building. So by killing that pod, you're going to basically pacify and save whoever's still alive in these structures. So it makes it to where like you can actually quarantine and close off the infection, and they're going to be more strategic. Because in Legacy, they'd build like 6 pods, 3 pods, all in the same area, and then those 3 pods were magically infecting a massive grid, even though they have no physical presence in those zones. So it's something that like systemically I've wanted to address, and we're going to address it where like a pod here is only going to affect a quarter. A pod here is going to affect the center. A pod here is going to affect this. So now they're going to be more strategic. You're going to be more strategic because you're going to be like, okay, we're going to take some operators, we're going to take some RTS players, we're going to take this area and sweep right. And then like have RTS players come in, they're going to close off this grid, make barracks, build ammo tents. There's a reinforcement point. So that way, if the team in the center gets pushed back, they can retreat back here as like a place to lick their wounds if they survive. So that way, like it's not going to be like, oh, every single pod's in this zone, so it's going to be so easy. Like we just bomb the hell out of it. You actually have to go out and search. So that's my fix for that. Okay, so let me move on to the next questions for someone murders me. So nothing on YouTube, nothing. Okay, so Discord, Phoenix, you have the floor. If he can speaketh. Hello? Hello, what's up, Phoenix?
Hello.
What's your question?
2 questions. First one, when it comes down to squads, how much will you see as far as like the other players? Like, will you be able to see their health, their kills,
Were you
their
playing as operator?
their
Were you
abilities?
playing as operator or RTS?
Huh?
So
Playing as an operator.
yeah, because I know
in a squad.
you're a really big operator, but you play RTS. But when we played, you always seem to jump towards that, and it's fun. And one of the things that I want to do with that, and I kind of floated the idea last week. I don't know if you were here, but the idea is that I want to make like a Battlefield type squad system, so then that way people can assign AI into a squad, but players can take slots in a squad. So the idea is that if you put AI into a squad, whoever the squad leader is commands those AI as an operator. And if you have other players in that squad, you can all see each other's information in the world. But every other operator is hidden. Everything else is hidden unless you look at someone directly. So that way you can have Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. And let's say Bravo is only 2 people, and Charlie is like 10, and Alpha is like 5. And some of them are RTS units, and some of them are operator units. That way, and then some of them can only be, like RTS units, and an operator can just switch into every once in a while if he wants to take command of a group and an outpost. So that's
Yeah, I'm looking for like a girl who's like
where's
honest,
that coming
who's
from?
chill. You know, to see how things go.
I hear your background. Oh god. So you figure it's so awkward. Right?
We
He
must
forgot to
listen to
mute.
his private
But,
life.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, my
So,
bad.
one of the most important things for me is addressing that, and that's part of the line items for the operator. That's why I'm like really gung ho about seeing how far we can push those systems from an RTS and an operator standpoint to make it to where it facilitates what you're talking about and everyone's concerns that I've had of like the UI is just so cluttered. There's so much going on. The horde icons getting in your way, the health bars of units getting in your way. So it's like being able to sit down for a couple of days and just focus on the operator and making that a little bit more like fleshed out, a little more usable. Because I'll give you an example. I don't know if you played this game, Phoenix, but I've been playing it. Me and Michael have been playing. Well, he's been watching me play it on Twitch, and I've been playing a shit ton of Last of Us Part 2. And me and Michael have been going back and forth about the movement set
Fair
of
enough.
Division versus Last of Us 2. And we agreed that we think that the best course of action to mirror a gameplay or like an animation style or like a movement style is Last of Us Part 2 over the Division because of how fluid it is, how fun it feels. You can like roll, you can like jump, you can like those kind of things are things we're looking at. Where it's like people have asked us about jumping, people have asked us about vaulting. So those are things that me and Michael are conscious of, and we're looking at other games and we're like, you know, honestly, if we just learned what Last of Us Part 2 did for good for combat and adapted that into the operator's playstyle and their movement style for like someone playing, that would be phenomenal. So that's something that like if you see me playing on Twitch constantly, I'm playing it later tonight probably. That's what I'm doing. Is I'm playing that game for research and I'm just kind of gauging like, would this work in Cepheus? It's kind of fun, you know, like that kind of stuff. So it's kind of the fun part of game design where you're like playing other games to kind of get inspiration and ideas, and then using it as like a feedback chamber of like, how could that work in my game X, Y, and Z? So fun. Any other questions you had, Phoenix?
Yeah, the second one is
Oh,
might
Lord.
get me kicked, but you know I gotta ask it. Can the grenades do
Yes, they
friendly
can.
fire as of right
Why
now?
would you get kicked for that question? That's wild.
I don't want to. I don't
Oh,
want to
you've
answer
been
that rest.
friendly
That
firing
Pleading
question.
the
people
fifth.
and you haven't noticed it till now. Oh, maybe that's where all our units have been going when we play. Uh-oh.
I will admit I
Oh,
haven't
Rufio
done it
comments in
yet.
the chat. It's you.
Well, now I know,
What?
Robert. We're gonna have to play together
No, we
one day.
don't. Not at all. Never mind. Never mind. I'm
Bye.
good. Thanks for the questions, Phoenix. Oh,
Well, now that you
no.
mention it,
Okay, so what else do we have for questions? Anyone else want to talk about their recent playtest? Any concerns
The
on
sign.
Discord, on the YouTubes? So we're getting to a point to wrap it up, and then I'll do a tally in the chats to see if anyone wants me to host a co-op session, and then I'll continue that on my personal Twitch. Ooh, excuse me. I'll probably break out some soda.
The sigh though was brilliant when I brought up team killing you, because you know We haven't played Helldivers
You
in
don't
a
even
while,
team kill
and
me nearly as much
my
as they say
trigger
you are in
finger
that
on the
game.
back of
I
your
team
head's
kill
getting
you
itchy.
more on accident, and then I feel horrible.
Don't, I've shot you a bunch of times.
That was you?
You know all the times you think you've been killed by bugs?
I can't stand you.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You're the fighting the bugs?
The bugs are the best. They're avatar. The automatons are
Bug
so. I love all of
diamonds.
them. I love Helldivers so much. That game is so immersive and fun.
I love fighting the automatons just because
But there's so many
Major
cool
you
order.
shoot
things.
down the dropships,
Yeah, there's so
watching
many
them
cool
fall
things
from the
that I
sky.
play that game for research as well, for like the operators, for like when we get to the point of implementing like the Juggernaut and like Leviathans. I want to add critical points where you can blow off their heads or their arms or their legs with stun guns. Stun guns will have a predisposition of like taking out a Juggernaut in 1 or 2 hits. So in that way, like I'm looking at Helldivers constantly. I think Winters was the one that brought it up recently, is you can see a lot of inspiration with the operators and what we kind of imagine we're going in the direction for like people that are playing as them, where you could have like the material rifle, the M107, or a recoilless rifle like the SMAW is the operator, and then just be able to like boom headshot a Juggernaut and he's gone, because you understand if I shoot the head with this, it's gonna blow off his head and kill him instantly. So it's like fun little stuff like that we're looking at, and it's like I cannot wait to get to that level of interactivity. But anyway, any other questions that we have before we segue into doing a co-op session?
Funky Catnip,
Catnip has
what
a
a
question.
name. Asks any plan to allow destroy buildings
No.
for more
That's more of a
space.
tactical thing. Like I don't have an answer for that just yet. I know that chaos destruction's getting better and better inside the engine, but it's one of those things where like if we do that, we'd have to have the manpower to model every building's interior, and it's like that's more of a manpower thing at this point. If it changes, I'll be the first one to jump on that bandwagon, because Fortnite and a bunch of other games have been perfecting that into their destruction model, and it looks good. Like if you guys have seen like the YouTube showcases that Epic has put out from the Robo Recall assets, I mean they destroy entire skyscrapers, and it looks gorgeous. So it's just one of those things where it's like for an indie team, a little too much. But if things change, things scale up. I don't know. We get like a publisher or something. That's always something we can look into long term to basically like up the ante. Because again, we're really consistent about that, in my opinion, is constantly just improving things, changing things, and adding new things as we go over these last 5 years. Okay, any other questions that we have?
Phoenix, will there be full damage?
Yeah, yes, but not now. Until I rework the parachute, there's no fall damage. When I rework the parachute, you're gonna break your legs, because you figure that's one of the line items for this week. If everything goes to plan, is I'm gonna rewrite the parachute and base it off of Battlefield or Call of Duty, where you can pull it and rip it as you're going, and make it a lot more dynamic, a lot more fluid. So that's one of the major things that I want to do, because I'm just tired of the current parachute. It's just crap. It works great for RTS, but it's not nearly the amount of precision or control that I want. I gotta go play Warzone probably for research. But I gotta install Battlefield 2042. That
Install
game is so fun
Battlefield
for the co-op.
2042.
We'll get
Play
Michael
with
to play
me.
with us. We'll torture him. We'll grab him. Michael,
Yes.
if you're listening, I'm coming for
We'll
you.
tie him down.
So, I left his name tag on because he just came and then left. He must have been listening on his phone on the way back from his day job, and he was like, "They're calling, they're summoning me." So, I think he just got off his day job. Yeah, he did. Okay, so then you figure, I think that's it for questions. Anything else you guys see? Anyone has their hands raised? No? Okay. So it seems like it's unanimous and everyone wants me to go host a co-op session. So if you're not a Patreon, check the general comms channel in the next 5 to 10 minutes. You'll need to go to the experimental build, go to betas, and then type in the password. It's a 5 gigabyte update. And we'll be playing on the map that I showed earlier, the older one. And we'll just play for a good hour or two, have some good time. I'll put it up on YouTube later. Don't be crazy in voice. I'll find you. And I'm going to stream it on my personal Twitch. So I'm going to turn off this one. So here, let me go ahead and give the outro, and then we'll segue over to that. So again, thank you guys so much for everyone that came. I hope you guys are happy with the progress that we have had. We're still constantly churning away and just trying to bang this out and get it to where it needs to be. As a closer, like we're trying to get everything to a point in the next 2 weeks. We can put it in your guys' hands. You can play it. You guys can come here every week and see your progress for yourself and judge it for yourself. If you guys want to support us outside of buying the game initially, consider our support packs on Steam. Consider the Amazon book for the book that Chris wrote. Consider supporting us on Discord or on Patreon for a monthly pledge. There's a weapon designer kit. You work with Michael to design a kit for one of the classes. The FAMAS, the F2000, and another gun I can't think of right now are from the Patreons. And then like there's a civilian designer kit. So if you want to be in the game and be a civilian when we get to phase 3, there's also that. And you just give us photos of yourself. And then we'll put you in the game and you get to choose the outfit with us. We'll work with you to figure out an outfit and all that fun stuff. And it's something we're going to be looking into doing more. Like as we get closer to phase 3, is redoing all the civilian models and all the infected. So keep in mind, if you're going to be in the game, you're going to be an infected variant as well. So your limbs will be blown off, your heads will be blown off. Like it's going to be horrible, and you're going to look like horribly ugly in the infected model. So just keep in mind, if you decide to do that, that's the fun part of it. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. And again, we're going to have a play test in the next 10 minutes or so on the Discord. I need some time to get ready, set everything active, and regroup with some of the devs. But yeah, so just keep an eye out for that in general comms, and thank you guys for coming.